very serious point. I think you've mentioned content design there, several times. I think content design is that's an interesting lens to see to look at this through. So for listeners who are unfamiliar, content design process of designing content for user-centered content. There's a great there's a great there's a great book by Sarah Richards called Content Design, available through all good outlets, that really encapsulates how you, I guess, work out the tone of voice, the register, the language usage, the vernacular of a certain group of users, and then help try to understand what they're trying to achieve, and then provide the language that is most suited to them. And that's such a simple concept. It's like use the language of your audience, and
I
yet,
know.
it seems lost, doesn't it, in so many web interactions?
Well, I think a lot of people think content design, it's a copywriter, you just need to go and write some copy, but it's not. Actually, if you look at a content designer, the skill set is incredible. They are part user researcher, part copywriter, part service designer. They're there in all of the interviews, listening to the language that's used. They're doing audits to look at all the different entry points into the service, look at the materials that need to be audited so you can make the changes across the whole of the piece. They're looking at the language used, because often what you find is if you don't have a lovely content designer, everything is written by back-end people. Worst case is it's a programmer, or me. Best case, somebody who's on the service, but even then, they're usually doing it from a business perspective and not from a user perspective. So content designers are an incredible asset to the team. I can't imagine not having the benefit. In fact, we had a lot of really good roles. We had a performance analyst on the team who was always, their whole position was looking at how we're going to collect data when we go into private beta and to public beta, what we're going to do with that data, how it's going to inform our decisions, how we're going to produce reports back to the organization after we step back and lead them with a tool. We also, not only do we build the tool allows them to do the fantastic AI, but we actually, I think one of the few people have built a maintenance tool that allows subject matter experts to go and actually update everything themselves instead of having to do a change request, pay us a fortune to come and make simple changes. That's not our model. So I just want to say, caution your blast. As an organization is one of the best companies I've had a chance to work for. They really do care, and their business model is really about delivering value, not trying to get the value from, once we're in, we'll just sort of like charge you a fortune for all the different changes you need. That's not how they're approaching it. So I like organizations that work like that. I've always said that if I'm still in your organization after a couple of years, then I really haven't done a very good job of transforming you, have I? What I've done is basically built a tool that allows me to get a revenue stream, and that's not proper transformation. That's milking the cow.
And I think that, across a number of the interviews that we've done in this series, we've talked to technologists who are all trying to achieve the same thing, which is to, I guess, enable content designers, content producers, publishers to publish off their own initiative at their own time in a format that they want to understand the audience better and to talk to that audience in the right format. That still remains one of the biggest technology challenges to this day, doesn't it?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I think I miscued you.
So we talk in this series to technologists who their main challenge is trying to help content producers, content designers, publishers, marketers to publish in the way that they want to the audience that they want to, the appropriate way. And it sounds like through the programs that you've been working on, that's been a really important factor to give the content producers the data and the insight and the ability to make the change themselves so that they can move things on at their own pace.
Definitely. Understanding who it is you're writing for is very clear. to know your different demographics. It's very interesting, because in terms of the Foreign Office, when people are getting in contact with you, they're probably in dire straits and they're probably very stressed. So being aware of that context, it's not the same as reading a newspaper. It's not the same as, oh, I just looked onto Amazon, I think I fancy a hedge trimmer. It's a different context, and unless you understand that context, you're very likely going to deliver content that is going to confuse. Because people in that situation, they're not going to be reading every single thing and trying to make sensible. Oh right, they must mean that if they said that. That's not going to happen. They're going to be very quickly going, okay, I've seen that word. That must be me. Right, okay, is this the right place? The heart's running fast. They've probably got potentially kids screaming in the background. Everything's going tits up effectively, and how understanding the context in which people are hitting your service is so important, and something that I'm very pleased. As part of government transformation, almost every organization, every supplier now will be doing proper user research, understanding the demographics, the users, the pain points, really articulating what the problem is that they're trying to solve in the first place. I think it's quite funny. I sometimes think that commercial organizations look down on the civil service. And I think if you look, the civil service has done a bloody good job of setting an exemplar of how we do digital transformation. I think they've led the way in terms of, I can remember when user research was novel. And then, very quickly, you saw in a lot of the corporates, user research was coming through. I mean, even still, service design is not something that you see all the time in corporate organizations. It's like a little bit of fairy dust you add on potentially if you've got a bit of a budget, but it's fundamental. And what I love about government is that working in government, well, lots of things actually. I love the fact that get benefit to add value to so many people's lives, and the challenges are always super interesting. But you're working with some really talented people, and at the forefront of DDAT, digital data and tech. That's what it's about, and being part of that is and also what, working in government, almost every service I've been working on, usually it's in the news at that time, because probably why you're working on it. So feeling like you're part of history is actually it's quite exciting sometimes. And people don't think about it. They think of government as quite dull and boring, but I find it fast paced. I find the challenges really exciting. I find the fact that your minister is on the news talking about your service. They're all the things that really excite me.
And we have exactly the same experience working with our public sector clients. Everything is a hot button topic. And it matters to people, doesn't it? It matters to people's daily lives in a way that perhaps in other sectors it may not do quite as much.
And it has to. I mean, we've still got a long way to go. I mean, I think you hear all the conspiracy theorists, and there's like think, government, they know everything about you, and go, I've worked in government. Honestly, I would wish they did have more joined up thinking, because honestly, that's the biggest problem. It's like, hang on, you've got my photo for my passport. Why is that not being used on this? You've got my information here. Why do I have to tell you all over again for this service? Yes, I think we still have some way to go. I think that, they're bringing in the single ID, which will probably be that first step to having that kind of overall one single service from government, which I think will make a big difference when we're able to do that. I think we're going in the right direction, but I still think we've got some way to go. But I really love the fact that this is the forefront. This is they're pushing all the time. Even I think they're doing a lot of work on AI across government at the moment. Lots of really interesting projects that, GDS are desperately trying to use generative AI for their search. Because if anyone's ever used search on Gov.uk, just it's practically impossible to find what you need. It's all over the place. But they're really trying to find ways of improving that, so you get exactly what you're looking for.
So we've done a brilliant job. I say you've done a brilliant job of diving straight into the heart of that amazing project you've
Yeah.
been, working, coming through the other side of it. Lots of people will be absolutely fascinated in that journey. But I'd like to kind of step back a few steps. So, how did you get into this kind of I guess like amazing transformational role? What led you to be part of
Oh
that?
God.
What was your own journey there? And I guess part of the other part of this question is that, for people coming into the industry, maybe they're a couple of decades behind us in terms of where they're headed. What does that journey look like for them these days, and how can we support them?
Sure. So it's really interesting. When I was 18, I wanted to be a programmer, and I went off and I worked at Abbey National, which is what now Santander, is it? So I'm sorry if you've got a dodgy mortgage. That's probably me who did the programming in the background. This was the days before we had object-oriented programming, and I realized, actually, you know what? I love tech, but I love talking to people, and I didn't like that insular lifestyle. So I went traveling around the world, and while I was traveling, I was reading about different careers I might try when I got back. And psychology was something that appealed. It had all the people elements, all the stuff I was missing when I was trying out programming. I came back, signed up for psychology, really enjoyed psychology. And then as I was in psychology, I found the things that really interested me was elements of AI, thinking, what is it to be human, human experience. Um, and I found a way of bringing together the psychology and my fascination with technology in um, in my degree, in my master's at Edinburgh, and then I continued on to do a PhD, also again in Edinburgh, looking at how we navigate virtual spaces. Actually, I think I've built one of the first caves at Edinburgh University. And we looked at how we build cognitive maps as we travel around virtual spaces and what we can do to enhance that or deprecate that. So that was my PhD. And that was my undergrad, and the PhD was then looking at, again, I carried on looking at how we build those tools to help people very, very quickly get a good understanding of the virtual space. So you can imagine you could use that in training anywhere. So if you can actually get people to, going to a scary fire or something, you've got 2D map. Is there a better way of getting you to understand the space? So that's what I was looking at, how we could do that. I left there, went into academia, set up, I think you touched on this earlier, the Emotion Lab. So I think that what interests me is that human experiences that we have with and through technology. I mean, you see, I've got games behind me. I'm a big gamer. I love strategy. I love the social interaction of a game. If you think about games, what they do at Christmas, we get the board game out, not because necessarily we're desperate to play a game, because it facilitates that interaction between people, and that's what I love. And then there's a bit of a challenge and a fun bit there. So I've always loved that interface between systems and people, and that's what the Emotion Lab was looking at. So we were looking at how we elicit and evoke emotions through technology, and also how we measure those emotions. So we had both avenues. So we're looking at the impact of music, the impact of what happens when you're touching gamepad. So we had one of the first effective games where we measured how stressed you were by looking at how hard you press buttons on the gamepad. So I probably don't know this, but the old gamepads had 256 degrees of freedom on the PlayStation 1. Or was it PlayStation 2? I can't remember now. It's got so long ago. So we're able to look at how stressed you were while you're playing the game, and we could alter the difficulty of the game based on how stressed you were. So we built games where you got you stressed and then had to calm yourself down in order to pull off a Zen move or whatever. So we really were playing around in that space with emotion, tech, and motivation. And then the next bit was like, okay, what motivates us to do this X and not Y? Why do people play games? What is it? And I think this was the start of that whole gamification piece, which I'm not a huge fan of where it's gone, but I think the endeavor to understand motivation in terms of pleasure in terms of games was really useful, because that did lead me on a journey then to take some of those models and apply them to games for health, games for education. I had some really interesting work at that time as an academic, working also with BAFTA, getting students working on really interesting entertainment products that were recognized by BAFTA, which was great. So getting the BAFTA winners at age 20 for their particular domain was great. It was a really nice experience. And I think we had the biggest game jam in Europe, probably in Scotland. We set up the Scottish Game Jam, which was huge. So we had everybody come in and make games over 48 hours and just feed them pizza all weekend and videoed the experience. So that was amazing. But towards the end of my academic career, I just was getting a little bit frustrated by the amount of bureaucracy, not feeling like I was making the change I wanted to, so moved over into consulting. Very fortunate. As part of my academic career, I met a lot of very interesting people. We did some work with Tomorrow's World and Child of Our Time, and I was on Richard and Judy. Putting a VR headset on Judy and live on TV. That was all I had was someone saying, "Don't mess up her hair, don't mess up her hair," which was great. But part of those experiences meant I met lots of other people outside of an academic world. So I met Rob from Bunnyfoot, who's helping set up something in Scotland, with Sarah from Nile. And I think when coming to the end of my didn't have the drive in academia anymore. I wanted to actually make more of an impact. I reached out and started to rebuild my career really from the bottom. So I said, look, I want to get into consulting. I want to get into transforming digital landscapes. So how do I do that? And they said, look, come in. You've got the research skills. How about you just start off as a user researcher, see how you get on, and I had to start off at the bottom again. It was great, leaving this academic space as a senior lecturer, doing all of this great, traveling the world, delivering papers, and then suddenly being at the bottom again. I think that was quite freeing, actually. Allowed me to build that, craft from the bottom up.